My name is Vorrak-Senn. I am a senior diplomatic observer for the Galactic Convergence Council. I have logged 412 years of interstellar fieldwork. I have sat across negotiation tables with species that breathe methane, species that communicate through synchronized trembling of their external bone plates, and one species that only speaks by releasing controlled bursts of bioluminescent gas from their torso glands. Truly a delightful people, those ones. Very expressive, but nothing, I mean absolutely nothing in my 4 centuries of professional life prepared me for the humans. It started on a perfectly unremarkable morning by Convergence Standard Time. Our station, the Velarthis Prime Orbital Hub, had received a formal transmission from a small oxygen-breathing civilization orbiting a medium-sized yellow star in Sector 9. They called their planet Earth. They called themselves humans. They had recently discovered faster-than-light communication, which was cute. Adorable, really. Like watching a newly hatched grelid figure out how to use its wings for the first time. The transmission was formal, professional even. They had requested a seat at the Convergence Council. They had submitted the proper documentation, all 47 forms, correctly filled out, correctly stamped, and submitted precisely on deadline. Do you know how rare that is? The Dorvani submitted their application 11 years late and attached a written apology for a species that had been dead for 3 centuries. But humans, no. On time. Every page. No errors. My supervisor, a tall and perpetually exhausted Kethlorn named Uravel, had called me into her office and slid the application across her desk with a look that said, "You handle this. I am too old and too tired." "Vorrak," she said, "take a shuttle down to Earth, meet their representatives, assess their readiness for council membership. Standard procedure." Standard procedure. Yes, of course. Standard procedure. I brought 2 junior observers with me. Palitha, a young Sivanri on her 3rd field assignment, and Goss, a Mekthari male who had spent most of his career cataloging atmospheric data and had therefore almost no experience with living beings doing unpredictable things. I would come to deeply regret that staffing choice. We landed outside a place called Washington, D.C., which apparently served as the governmental center of one of Earth's major political units. The humans had sent a welcoming party, 12 individuals. They were standing in a neat line outside a building with large white columns, all wearing matching dark garments, all smiling. The smiling was the first thing that set me off balance. Most species, when they bare their teeth, are communicating aggression. I knew intellectually that humans did it as a sign of warmth. I had read the briefing documents. I had told myself, "Vorrak, those are friendly teeth, do not flinch." I flinched anyway. I could not help it. There were so many teeth. The lead human stepped forward. He was a broad-shouldered male with short brown hair and what I would later learn humans called a firm handshake. His name was Ambassador Kessler, and he extended his hand toward me the way my briefing documents had described. I shook it. He nearly pulled my arm out of its socket. "Ambassador Vorrak-Senn," he said, loudly and with tremendous enthusiasm. "Welcome to Earth. We are honored to receive you." "Yes," I said, checking that my arm was still attached. "Likewise." Palitha leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Is that greeting always so physical?" "Apparently," I whispered back. Goss was already taking readings on his atmospheric scanner and muttering to himself about nitrogen levels. I decided to leave him to it. The humans brought us inside the building, which was impressively large by local standards, and sat us down around a long table with more chairs than I had ever seen gathered in one place for a meeting this size. There were also small dishes of food placed along the center of the table, different types, many colors, arranged in patterns. I stared at the food. Ambassador Kessler noticed me staring. "Please," he said, gesturing warmly, "help yourself. We wanted to offer you a variety. We were not sure what your dietary requirements were, so we prepared options." I looked at Palitha. Palitha looked at me. Neither of us spoke. They had prepared options because they were not sure what we needed. So instead of asking or guessing once, they had simply prepared everything. Multiple varieties of food for beings they had never met before, on the off chance that something on the table might work for us. I picked up a small round item and ate it. It was a grape, I later learned. I did not know that then. All I knew was that it was the correct size. It was not poisonous to my biology, and it tasted sweet. I ate 3 more. Kessler smiled again. There were the teeth. I was getting more accustomed to them. "We are glad you find something to your liking," he said. The formal portion of the meeting began. Kessler introduced his team. Each one had a different title. Some were scientists, some were politicians. One of them was described as a cultural liaison, which I understood to mean a specialist in not accidentally offending visiting species. A wise position. I wished more civilizations employed such people. The cultural liaison's name was Tolliver. She was a small woman with very observant eyes and the habit of writing notes on a small paper pad with a physical ink instrument. She did not use any electronic device for this, just paper and pen. I found this endearing in a way I could not fully explain. Kessler began outlining humanity's case for council membership. He spoke calmly, clearly. He did not oversell. He did not use dramatic language or make promises that sounded too large. He simply presented facts. Population data, technological capability, resource production, interspecies communication infrastructure, current treaties with neighboring systems. "Wait," I interrupted him. "You said current treaties," I said. "With which neighboring systems?" He blinked at me pleasantly. "Oh, we have been in contact with the Velhari Collective for about 6 years now, and the Dross Compact reached out to us roughly 4 years ago. We signed a non-interference agreement with them last year. Standard terms." I stared at him. I looked at Pelitha. Pelitha was writing very quickly in her own notebook. The Velhari Collective, the Dross Compact, both established interstellar civilizations, both notoriously cautious about contact with developing species. Both of them had apparently just wandered over to Earth, struck up a conversation, and ended up signing formal agreements. "How," I said slowly, "did those contacts begin?" Kessler tilted his head. "Well, the Velhari ship showed up in our outer system. We detected it pretty quickly. We sent a radio signal their way, just a greeting, not expecting much. They responded. We exchanged communication keys. That took about 8 months. After that, we started talking regularly." "You sent them a greeting," I repeated, unprompted. "Sure," he said, as though this was the most natural thing in the world. As though broadcasting friendly signals at an unidentified alien vessel was simply something a person does on a Tuesday. Goss had stopped looking at his atmospheric scanner. He was listening now, his large Mekthari eyes fixed on Kessler with an expression I can only describe as quiet alarm. I cleared my throat. "And the Dross Compact?" Kessler scratched the back of his neck. "Ah, that one is a slightly better story. One of their survey drones got caught in a debris field near our outer asteroid belt. It was going to be destroyed. Our people spotted it, maneuvered a recovery vessel out there, pulled the drone free, repaired it, and sent it back." The room was silent. "You repaired their drone," I said. "What aliens of?" "It was damaged," he said. "It was an alien drone," I said. "Of ordered within presendum. Of ordered where?" "It was still damaged," he said, and then he smiled again. "Teeth and everything." I sat back in my chair. I looked at the ceiling of this white-columned building in the middle of a city on a planet I had arrived at just 40 minutes ago, and I had the first of what would become many conversations with myself, all of which began with the same question: what exactly are these creatures? The meeting continued for 3 more hours. By the end of it, I had 17 pages of notes, 4 more grapes, and a deeply unsettled feeling somewhere behind my second stomach. Not the unpleasant kind of unsettled, the kind that happens when you encounter something that does not fit neatly into any category you have built up over 400 years of professional observation. Humans were polite, organized, unexpectedly practical. They had made allies through sheer stubborn friendliness. They fixed things that were not theirs to fix. They fed strangers first and asked questions second. They smiled with all of their teeth and somehow made it welcoming. As we prepared to leave for our shuttle, Tolliver approached me quietly. She held out her paper notepad. "I hope this is not too forward," she said, "but I wrote down a few things I noticed about your team's reactions during the meeting. I thought it might help you feel more comfortable next time, if there is a next time. Things we could do differently to be better hosts." She handed me the notepad. I read it. She had been watching us the entire meeting. Not to study us the way a scientist studies a specimen, to learn what made us comfortable, to adjust, to improve. I handed the notepad back. "Keep it," I said. "You may need it." She smiled. Fewer teeth than Kessler, thankfully. On the shuttle back to Velethis Prime, Goss finally broke his silence. He had not spoken since the story about the Dross drone. He looked out the window at Earth growing smaller beneath us, his atmospheric scanner forgotten in his lap. "Vorrak," he said quietly. "Yes," I said. "Are we sure we are the advanced ones?" I did not answer him. I did not have one. I filed my preliminary report to Uravel that same evening. It was 3 sentences long. Humans are organized, friendly, and have already made 2 interstellar allies without our assistance or knowledge. Recommend immediate full review of their council application. Also bring snacks to the next meeting. They will offer you food and it would be rude not to reciprocate. Uravel sent back a single-word reply, "Explain." So I wrote the full report, all 42 pages of it. I included the Grape incident, I included the Dross drone story, I included Maris Tolliver's notepad, and the fact that she had been quietly cataloguing our comfort levels the entire time we were supposed to be evaluating them. I included Goss's question from the shuttle, because I felt it was professionally relevant, and also because Goss deserved credit for saying out loud what I had been thinking since approximately the second Grape. Uravel called me on a direct channel. "Vorrak," she said slowly, "you have been doing this job for 4 centuries, 412 years, I said. And this is the first time you have filed a report that recommends we upgrade a species before the second visit? This is the first time a species fixed someone else's broken equipment and used it as a diplomatic opening, I said. I am adapting to the circumstances." She was quiet for a moment. "Go back, take a longer look, and this time see if you can get access to their military infrastructure. Standard evaluation protocol." I looked at Palitha. Palitha looked at me. "Their military infrastructure," I repeated. "Yes," said Uravel. "You know the checklist. We need to know if they are a threat." I thought about Kessler's handshake. I thought about the teeth. I thought about the Grape arrangement on the table. "Of course," I said. "Perfectly standard." We returned to Earth 12 days later. This time Kessler met us with a slightly smaller welcoming party, which I appreciated, and Maris Tolliver had apparently briefed everyone on the handshake situation, because nobody tried to remove my arm this time. They had arranged a full tour: government facilities, science centers, agricultural operations, energy infrastructure. It was thorough. Impressively thorough. Most civilizations applying for council membership show you the best parts and quietly root you away from everything else. Humans apparently did not do that. They put everything on the itinerary, including on the 3rd day, a visit to what they called a joint military command facility. I want to describe this carefully because I think the sequence of events matters. We arrived at a large, strictly secured compound. Armed personnel were posted at every entrance. The vehicles parked outside were heavy, built for function, not appearance. Our escort through the facility was a uniformed officer, a tall woman with close-cropped grey hair, and the calm, measured movements of someone who has spent decades making very large decisions very quickly. Her name was General Faye Okorun, and she shook my hand at exactly the right pressure. I suspected Maris Tolliver had briefed her too. General Okorun walked us through the facility with the same relaxed confidence that Kessler had shown in the meeting room. She explained their command structure, their response systems, their coordination protocols between different Earth nations. She used clear language. She did not exaggerate. About halfway through the tour, I asked, because it was on the checklist and because I genuinely wanted to know, what is your current military capacity in terms of vessels capable of operating beyond your home system? Okorun looked at me. Her expression did not change. 14, she said. 14. I wrote it down. A modest number. Fine. Normal for a species at this stage. Then she added, combat ready. We have another 9 in various stages of retrofit. And their armament? I asked. She told me. I stopped walking. Palitha bumped into me from behind. I turned to look at her. Her mouth was open slightly. She had been taking notes and had apparently stopped mid-word because she also needed a moment. The weapons systems General Okorun had just described were not the weapons of a species that had recently discovered faster-than-light communication. They were the weapons of a species that had been quietly, methodically, and with very little external announcement, been preparing themselves for a universe that might not be entirely friendly. How long? I said, and I kept my voice very even. Have you been developing these systems? Okorun tilted her head slightly. Well, the core program started about 30 years ago, after the Velhari made first contact, actually. We figured we should be ready for the possibility that not everyone out there would be as pleasant. 30 years. They had met one friendly alien civilization, immediately concluded that the rest of the universe might not share that friendliness, and spent 3 decades quietly building a defensive infrastructure, while simultaneously sending warm greetings to every ship that wandered into their system. Friendly face forward. Preparations made quietly behind it. I looked at Goss. Goss had his atmospheric scanner turned off. He had not used it once today. He was just watching. General Okorun, I said carefully, do the Velhari or the Dross Compact know about these systems? She smiled. Not Kessler's wide, enthusiastic smile, a smaller one, more precise. We have not hidden them, she said. We simply have not announced them. If someone asks, we tell them. Nobody has asked before today. Nobody had asked. Because nobody had thought to ask. Because a species this new, this recently emerged on the interstellar scene, simply was not supposed to have military hardware at this level. It was not in the standard evaluation framework. There was no checkbox for it. I made a note to add one when I got back. On the 4th day, something happened that was not on the itinerary. We were being driven between facilities in a large ground vehicle when the driver received a communication and pulled over to the side of the road. Kessler, who was seated beside me, listened to whatever was being relayed to him through a small device in his ear, and his expression shifted slightly. Not dramatically, a small tightening around the eyes. We may need to adjust this afternoon's schedule, he said to me. There is a situation. What kind of situation? I asked. He paused for just a breath. A Dross compact vessel has entered our outer system. It is not one of their standard survey configurations. It is broadcasting on a frequency we have not heard from them before. I sat up straighter. Is it a threat signal? We do not know yet, Kessler said. Our people are working on it. And then, and I want to be precise here because this is the moment I think about most when I recall this visit. Kessler pulled out a small communication device, made 2 calls, and reorganized the entire afternoon without raising his voice once. Within 20 minutes the vehicle had changed direction. We were moving toward the military command facility we had visited the day before. General Okorun met us at the entrance. Her people were already at their stations. Screens were lit up across the operations floor. Officers were moving with quick, practiced efficiency, but nobody was running. Nobody was shouting. It looked, absurdly, like a very busy office on a deadline. Kessler turned to me. You have more experience with Dross communications than we do. Would you be willing to help us interpret the signal? He asked me. He did not demand. He did not assume. He asked as a host asks a guest, with full understanding that I could say no. I said yes. It took 2 hours. Paletha and I worked alongside 3 human communication specialists, and I will say without any hesitation that those 3 humans were among the most focused, precise, and adaptable colleagues I have encountered in my entire career. They absorbed new information instantly. They did not repeat the same approaches when those approaches were not working. They improvised. They suggested ideas I would not have considered. One of them, a young man named Tavio Brenne, figured out the frequency modulation pattern in 40 minutes using a method he openly admitted he had made up on the spot. It worked. You said much. The signal was not a threat, it was a distress call. The Dross vessel had experienced a systems failure near the outer asteroid belt, in almost the exact same location where the humans had rescued the Dross drone 4 years earlier. It was, cosmically speaking, a remarkable coincidence, or perhaps not. I was beginning to suspect the universe had a sense of humor specifically where these humans were concerned. Kessler did not hesitate. He dispatched a recovery vessel within minutes of the signal being confirmed. He then recorded a calm, clearly worded message to the Dross Compact explaining what had happened and what his people were doing about it. He asked if there was anything further that would help. That was it. No political calculation. No discussion of what this gesture might gain them in future negotiations. A Dross ship was in trouble. Human people were available. The human people went. I watched all of this from across the operations floor, and I felt something I had not felt in a professional context since my first decade of field work. Something that takes most species centuries to earn, and these people had simply walked in carrying it like they did not know it was unusual. Trust. I trusted them. Not because they had told me anything impressive, not because their weapon systems were more advanced than expected, or because their paperwork had been filed on time, or because they had arranged food for us at the first meeting. I trusted them because in a moment of unexpected pressure, with a watching alien delegation right there in the room, they had not changed, they had not performed, they had simply done exactly what they apparently always did. The thing that was right. On the final evening of our visit, Kessler arranged a dinner, not a formal state dinner, an actual dinner, at a long wooden table in a building adjacent to the embassy, with real food prepared by people who cooked it themselves. It was loud. Several conversations happened at once. Someone laughed very suddenly at something across the table, and I nearly fell off my chair. Maris Tolliver was seated beside me. She had her notepad again. "How are you finding Earth?" she asked. I considered the question with appropriate seriousness. "Confusing," I said. She laughed. "We get that a lot, apparently." "You are not what the council expected," I told her. "What did the council expect?" I thought about the standard developmental framework. The checklist. The boxes we tick for species at this stage: basic technology, cautious first contacts, internal conflicts still being resolved, years away from meaningful interstellar participation. "Something smaller," I said finally. Maris Tolliver wrote something on her notepad. She looked at it. She tore the page out, folded it neatly, and handed it to me. I opened it. It said, "We are working on it." I looked at her. She was smiling again, still fewer teeth than Kessler, still somehow the most disarming expression I had seen in 412 years. I folded the paper and placed it in my coat. I returned to Velethis Prime and filed my final report. It was 67 pages. I recommended immediate council membership, full diplomatic recognition, an upgrade of Earth's classification from emerging civilization to a category I had to invent a new term for because the existing ones did not apply, and a personal note to whoever read this: do not underestimate them. Not because they will harm you, but because they will help you in ways you did not ask for, fix things you did not know were broken, and smile at you with all of their impossible teeth, and you will find, to your great surprise, that you are glad they did. Ravel approved the report in 48 hours, a council record. She sent me one final message along with the approval. It said, "Did you bring me any grapes?" I had, actually. I had packed a small container, just in case. Perhaps the humans were rubbing off on me.